I'll probably go into my build here in more detail, but basically you can pause the video as I hover through some things and go through spells and enchantments I have on it. It's kind of a do-everything build, but more not a jack of all trades, more of a master of all trades. He's going to stop leveling at 81 because I just want to. That was the original max level in Skyrim, so I'm actually trying to design a build that only uses 80 perks, 80 buffs to magic and health and all that stuff, and make it OP. So he's going to be able to be a perma sneak dude, thanks to being a vampire combined with illusion magic later with invisibility. He will be able to be completely undetected whenever he feels like it. So he's still a sneak guy. He's still a pure warrior guy in a sense because he's using heavy armor. With the heavy armor perks, he's got maximum physical damage resistance, and thanks to destruction spell cost reduction, also affecting destruction enchantments on your gear. His swords, you'll see, still do decent damage. Now, you can get way more as a pure warrior build who focuses on like one-handed buffs and all that on your enchanted gear instead. I know that. You can get like literally 1,000 damage. But I want to use destruction magic, so if I'm going to do that, at least it lets me do both. It lets me, without having to invest in archery and one-handed, for instance, on my enchantments. I just don't invest in any of it, but I slap on those enchantments on my weapons, and then they still do good damage. Well, I can still spam destruction spells. And that's obviously his other thing as a battle mage, is he can spam like AoE destruction spells, which are great. Don't do much damage on legendary difficulty, but you see, they still do enough to at least get the job done eventually. And the thing is, if destruction has anything on pure warrior at least, is that it still is the only way to get AoE damage in the game. And it's better utility at least. Like you can literally stun lock people with it. So and speaking of, like he's going to get his block up for block resistance, and also the last perk that lets him charge with the shield and effectively stun lock everyone to death that way with the shield charge. So he's going to have that too. His Conjuration's obviously maxed out. Conjuration's the best school, as we're going to talk about later, the best magic school in the game, because it's the one school that I would say even pure warriors, for instance, would still probably invest a little in magic and still get Conjuration, because having two Jamor Lords with you, even as a pure warrior, is still OP. It's still useful to do. And then finally, he's going to max out illusion magic. Illusion also, in Skyrim in particular, unlike Oblivion, it actually is one of the best, most OP things in the game. That breaks the game, really. Especially as a vampire, the vampire buff to illusion magic affects your mayhem to the point that mayhem will actually hit even the highest level enemies in the game. Like, there practically won't be an enemy that mayhem doesn't affect. So you can just walk into a dungeon, cast mayhem as a vampire, it affects all the Draugr Death Lords too, and the entire dungeon just massacres itself. Because it goes through walls as well. So, unlike other master spells. Illusion is so OP in Skyrim. So this guy's going to have Illusion, Conjuration, Restoration, Enchanting, Smithing. The one thing is he won't have Alchemy. I just am relying on the Vampire buff combined, Necromancy Vampire buff combined with buying like maxed out smithing and enchanting potions at stores, which is good enough. I know you can get even stronger ones by actually investing in alchemy, but I just couldn't justify on this guy. I'd have to get rid of block. I'd have to get rid of one of my other things that I find more valuable, especially when I'm not a pure warrior. If I was a pure warrior, yes, absolutely go alchemy combined with enchanting and smithing to get the most damage possible on your weapons. But you don't need it for armor, because armor caps at like around 600. So I don't really have a need for that. So yeah, this guy is just going to be great at everything. Like great Conjuration and Illusion combined lets him just not have to fight or do anything if he feels like it. I can sneak as well effectively with invisibility and just never be detected if I feel like it. I'm a super tank. I still invested a lot into health. Have max armor, have a good restoration magic too, with a lot of magicka with it. A good balance basically of magic and health. So that, yeah, I'm just pretty much, and then of course I have a bunch of magic resist. And also the fact I'm not doing a pure warrior and combining like archery with melee, for instance, in particular, I'm able to have more magical resistance on my gear. Especially when I'm not Breton. which I know if I picked Breton, he'd be even better. I just didn't want to. Again, I forgot to mention in my tier list video that High Elves 50 extra Magicka also increases their magic regen, though, because in Skyrim, your max Magicka is still increases your regen because it's all percentage based. So yeah, having more magic also increases your magic regen, just so you know. I still would say High Elf's rank 4. I'm not changing my ranking of High Elf in my last video. I just wanted to mention that as another side note, because I would definitely say my ranking of him, at least in number 4 spot, is still like absolute in my view, because I forgot to mention that he also gets a magic regen buff too. Anyway, let's finally get into Conjuration now. I didn't want to talk too much about it because adapt spells, we're only going to talk about vanilla spells and the few extra spells added by the Anniversary Edition. I'm not going to talk about mods or anything like that. I know there's Steam now, and also when you get to the Dragonborn DLC, there's Steam Atronachs, I know. However, I think I remember they weren't that great. Although I may change it later. It's been a while since I played Skyrim, actually. I played it off and on since it started, it's true. But this is my first playstyle after like a year off from the game, I think. So I'll have to remember when I play the Dragonborn DLC again what all those conjurations were about. But I remember I wasn't really that impressed. I definitely remember all of them, including the Steam Atronach, did not trump Conjuring 2 Dremora Lord still. So let's just start with the top spot because of that. Top spot goes to 2 Dremora Lords, hands down, end of story. There's no contest. There is no contest, okay? There's nothing in this game that beats 2 Dremora Lords. For the most part, there's rare instances. If you're fighting a dragon and you don't have the dragon rend shout yet, then they don't have range attacks, so that can be annoying. Also, really the only instance that's consistent with being bad to have Dremora Lords out is if you're fighting, well, not just mages, but like fighting multiple like master level mages. Like their damage, as I went into, magic does the most damage in this game. From enemies, I mean, not from the player. But yeah, from enemies, magic is the most annoying thing. You need magic resist, especially on higher difficulties, and you need a lot of it too. So yeah, master level mages, even on like master, and I think even legendary, because your conjurations get buffed by the difficulty too, but even with that, they still will just rip through a Dremora Lord so quickly, because Dremora Lords have no magic resist, obviously, and they just charge at them, so they're easy targets. But when you have multiple master ones and they just spam the highest damage attacks in the game at them while they're backing away constantly, yeah, they decimate Dremora Lords pretty quickly, I've noticed. However, even then, it's not that bad. Because if you're a good mage like me and you have the summoner perk maxed, you just conjure another Dremora Lord and you can conjure them at range. So I like to like mess with them by conjuring one in front of them, but then conjuring my second one behind them with the range buff to just like really mess up a master mage that way. So even then, it's not like you can't kill them with Dremora Lords, but that's like their one occasional weakness. But everywhere else, Dremora Lords, they're not the tankiest conjurations, but they're also not the weakest. They have a good mid-level amount of health to them, but then they offer the most damage by far, even more than the Bone Colossus. The Dragon Priest dude that was added, he surprisingly is really meh to me. And let's talk about those guys now. So I would rank the Bone Colossus combined with basically just the Necromantic, like the Skeleton champions and the Skeleton mages. We don't care about Adapt or Apprentice or Novice level conjuration spells of any type that are in vanilla or were added in the DLC or any of them, because I've used them all. I know they're all inferior to Expert. The few Expert and Master conjuration spells, those are obviously the best spells. So we're not even going to talk about those. Just only talk about the Expert and Master conjuration spells. So yeah, the skeleton dudes like I'm using here right now, they can be fun. They're fun right now because you can conjure 4 of them. That's what the Bone Colossus lets you do. You can conjure 2 more. Now, you can conjure 4, but if you conjure the 4th one, it still removes the Bone Colossus. And I'd rather have 3 skeleton champions or mages with a Bone Colossus instead, because the Bone Colossus has a really high health pool. This video is about to cut out. I can only do it for 10 minutes, but I'll still finish off my list here. try and end it earlier. So yeah, we're in dark mode right now. But yeah, Bone Colossus, I'm ranking Dremora Lords top, period. 2 Dremora Lords beats everything consistently in my view. Also because not only do they have the highest damage output by far, but also they last longer. Like, for some reason in Skyrim, the vanilla Skyrim, the perk that doubles your conjuration duration, your summon duration, it only affects the vanilla spells. So it affects the Atronachs as it says it does, but it also affects the familiar, the novice one we don't care about, but it affects like the wolf that you get at the beginning, and it affects the Dremora Lord. And I think the reason it does is because when they made the game originally, they knew that they wanted that buff to obviously affect all summons, as it makes the most sense. So they, even though it says Atronachs, it still affects every summon from vanilla. But also because of that, everything that was added later, including in the Anniversary Edition now with these necromantic spells, wasn't buffed by it. So the Bone Colossus and the Skeleton Champions, all those guys, they only last 60 seconds as a base, whereas the Dremora Lord lasts 2 minutes. And with a vampire buff, he lasts 3 minutes. Now the vampire buffs the bone, it buffs everything. It's insane. Again, I'll also just one tight note about my build. If you're gonna do any kind of mage build, always be a vampire. It buffs everything. It's crazy. Yeah, you have a slight weakness in the sun, but it's not a big deal. It's not a small buff, but it's also not a big debuff either. And then once you finish the DLC, you get access to the bow that blocks the sun if you really just want to make sure you don't have that debuff when you're fighting in the sunlight. I find I still don't even need it because I'm still OP with the debuff anyway, but because your buffs from the vampire to like your enchanted gear are still active during the sunlight though, to help counteract that some. And then obviously when you're not in the sunlight, then you're really OP. But other than that, it's absolutely choose vampire if you're going to be a mage of any sort or a stealth guy of any sort. But even just if you're going to find the open, but you're still going to be some kind of battle mage like I am, still choose vampire. Vampire all the way. If you're going to be a pure warrior, you still want to be a vampire at some point to get the enchantment buffs to make your weapons do more damage, and then you'll just get rid of the vampirism. So you may not want to stay a vampire as a warrior, but you still want to temporarily at some point in the game become one to max out your actual melee damage or archery damage that way. from the exploits in the game from Vampire Necromage. Anyway, let me still finish this video up. So yeah, the bone guys added in the Anniversary Edition, I would rank right below the Dremora Lord as a combo of all of them because of what I just said, and also because you can still get 4 summons, which is still really good. It still doesn't do as much damage as having 2 Dremora Lords in my view. The only reason you would do 4 summons is just to have 4 summons, to have more distractions, which is still very good and one of the main purposes of Conjuration. So, which is why, but it's just still not as good as just like two summons is usually enough distraction you need anyway. And then the Dremora Lords on top of it actually do a lot of damage. Also, we can't neglect the fact that the Dremora Lords are the most fun conjurations too, because they actually have lines. They actually talk during the fight and are so amazing. Well, it's just so funny to hear them just say, "Oh, I'm going to kill you, weakling," or "I honor my lord by destroying you." And then on top of that, they get cinematic death animations. They get to decapitate people, and it's so amazing. Like, the hands down, 2 Dremora Lords in every way is better than anything I've seen so far. But yeah, Bone Colossus and the Bone Dudes, I'd rank right below them. Now, below them in top 3rd spots, I would rank all of the Atronachs. Yes, I actually still consider even the Flame Atronach, if you didn't notice in my video, which I think I used to at some point, or the Frost Atronachs. The reason I rank them so high is because they still get buffed by the Conjuration perk tree, and especially on higher difficulties, like Potent Flame Atronach on Legendary difficulty is still going to last a really long time. Like, it can still take a lot of hits. It can't do much damage anymore. It's mostly just a distraction, but it's still a very good distraction. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that, especially as a destruction mage, you can cast specific destruction spells, like AoE ones, like Fireball, with the Flame Atronachs out, and not have to worry about doing any damage to them. So you can cast them out, they're permanent distractions, and then you can also permanently spam Fireball, hitting multiple enemies without having to worry about hitting your guys, which has always been annoying with destruction. If you use companions, is keep hitting them, and if they're the ones that can be killed, then you will always constantly kill your dude without meaning to. It's so annoying. So yeah, that's one of the biggest reasons I think they're really good, is because they can do that. And for that reason, I put like Frost Atronachs at the top of the Atronach list, because they're the tankiest ones out of the three of them. And on top of that, Ice Storm is the best AoE like destruction spell in my view. Now, we're not talking about Elemental Blast, the new one added. That one actually does a lot more damage and is like the only destruction spell that finally can let you dish out a good amount of damage on legendary difficulty. However, the annoying thing about it is that it can hit your Atronachs, period. So it's one of those spells that, again, can kill your companions and your summons no matter what you summon, too. So that can sometimes get annoying. So I still find I use the vanilla Fireballs and Ice Storms a lot of the times with Atronachs out, just so that I can effectively use them without worrying about hitting my Dremora Lords, for instance, or any other conjurations. I cast my Dremora Lords usually when I just want to go overkill and I want to just use my weapon instead of my spells. So it's like, oh, I'll use my shield, my sword and shield, and cast the Dremora Lords with that, for instance, rather than spam Fireballs with them out. Or use use my expert, like Thunderbolt, that can only hit one dude at range, instead of an AoE spell that hits my summons as well. But yeah, that's why Atronachs ranks so high. And Ice Storm, the reason it's the best destruction AoE vanilla spell is because it group staggers people, which none of the others do. So if you didn't notice, like if you spam like dual cast with the impact perk Ice Storm, its stagger stun locking is AoE, which is not true of Fireball and Chain Lightning. You have to hit guys directly, so it only affects one guy that you have to precisely hit to every time to stun lock them. But with Ice Storm, you don't have to aim as much, and it hits everybody. Like, you just cast that thing, and it stun locks an entire army. Like, it's one of the most busted things, I think. So yeah, that's really OP. And that's why they would rank. But finally, why they also rank number 3 is they absorb, or not absorb, but they're immune to magic, as I just said. That affects dragons and more particularly mages. And most mages in this game do the most damage to the player, for one, if you don't have a ton of magic resist on higher difficulties against like the master mages. But most of them will also only use like one element. They'll only use frost spells. They'll only use fire spells. One of the 3 usually is what happens. And what that means is if you're fighting a Frost Mage and you cast a Frost Atronach, he can't do anything to your Frost Atronach because he can't use Frost spells. You'll see he stops using it too against him because he knows he can't damage him. Instead, he switches to his dagger, which for most mages is not enchanted and does no damage. So they're or very little, like they're not doing hardly anything anymore. So your Atronachs can effectively shut down a mage because of that. Now, why did I rank the bone guys higher because of that? Well, again, you get to cast 4 guys with the bone new spells, which is just so much more OP in my view. And also, more importantly, we're talking about Conjuration generally rather than specifically for my playstyle, which is Destruction Magic 2. A lot of pure warrior builds or pure sneak player bow builds may not use Destruction Magic at all, but they still want to use Conjuration because it's one of the most OP schools in the game. It's just extra companions, basically. So if they do that, then they're obviously going to find much more utility and use out of the bone guys, especially in the late game where you may not need the magic resist they offer against when you get your own magic resist, for instance. So in the late game where you don't have to worry about mage damage as much, once you stack multiple mage armor, you don't need the Atronachs as much. But having 4 summons out is still always OP. So yeah, I would rank Dremora Lords top. They're the kings still for any playstyle. But yeah, Bone Guys second. They're third for my specific playstyle. I find I still use Atronachs more because I use destruction spells more. But for a pure warrior and any other kind of playstyle, they would rank above Atronachs. So I would say overall, they're the second best kind of conjuration spell. And then rank 3 is still the vanilla conjurations ones. Because again, they're still good and they're still not bad as far as damage and durability is concerned. But more importantly, like I said, they are literally immune to certain elements. So you can like strategically cast like a flame or a frost one if you're dealing with fire or frost magic. And then it lets you spam your own spells if you use destruction spells. So that's, a lot of people forget about that.